The evening sun cast long shadows across the small office building, as most workers had already headed home. But in a corner cubicle, a soft humming could be heard over the gentle whir of the air conditioning. Laurel Taylor sat hunched over her desk, organizing the last of the week's paperwork while unconsciously singing under her breath. At 42, she had spent nearly 2 decades in this same administrative position at Henderson's Insurance, filing claims and answering phones with unfailing politeness. The tune that escaped her lips was one she'd heard on the radio that morning, though Laurel's version had something the original recording lacked. There was a warmth and richness to her voice that seemed out of place in the sterile office environment. "You still here, Laurel?" The friendly voice of her supervisor broke her concentration. Laurel immediately stopped singing and straightened up, a slight blush creeping across her face. "Just finishing up these claims, Mr. Patel. Didn't want to leave them for Monday." Mr. Patel smiled kindly. Always so dependable. "But don't forget we've got the holiday party tomorrow night. You're coming this year, right? You skipped the last 2. Laurel's fingers nervously adjusted her plain glasses. The thought of social gatherings always made her stomach tighten. "I'll try to make it," she answered non-committally. After her boss left, Laurel gathered her things and headed to her car. The drive home took her past the same landmarks she'd seen thousands of times. The diner where she sometimes treated herself to breakfast on Sundays, the high school her twin children had graduated from 3 years ago, and the community center with its faded sign advertising local events. Her small house sat at the end of Maple Street. Nothing fancy, but it was paid for, something she took pride in after years of careful budgeting as a single mom. Photographs lined the entryway, most showing her children, Abby and Thomas, now both juniors in college. Their absence left the house eerily quiet most days. Laurel dropped her purse on the kitchen counter and opened the refrigerator, pulling out leftovers from yesterday. As she waited for the microwave to heat her meal, she switched on the small radio that sat on her windowsill. It had belonged to her grandmother, and despite its age, it still produced a clear sound. As a ballad filled the kitchen, Laurel closed her eyes and began to sway gently. Without the self-consciousness that plagued her at work, her voice now flowed freely, matching the singer note for note, then adding little flourishes that transformed the simple song into something more complex and beautiful. This was her private ritual, singing in her kitchen with only the walls to hear her. Music had always been Laurel's companion through life's hardest moments. When her husband walked out 12 years ago, leaving her with 5-year-old twins, during the nights she'd stayed up worrying about making ends meet. Through the lonely months after the kids left for university, her voice had been her constant friend, though one she rarely shared with others. Once, long ago, she'd dreamed of something different. In high school, her choir teacher had pulled her aside after hearing her solo at the spring concert. "You have a gift," he'd told her with unusual seriousness. "You should consider music school." But then life happened. College seemed too expensive. She fell in love young. The twins came along, and suddenly she was a divorced mother with responsibilities that left no room for impractical dreams. The next evening, Laurel stood in front of her bedroom mirror, evaluating her appearance with a critical eye. She'd chosen her best outfit for the office holiday party, a simple navy blue dress she'd bought on clearance 2 years ago. It wasn't fashionable, but it was neat and appropriate. She twisted her graying brown hair into a bun and applied a touch of lipstick, then grabbed her car keys. The party was being held in the company's conference room, transformed for the evening with twinkling lights and festive decorations. Laurel found a quiet corner and nursed a cup of punch, exchanging pleasantries with coworkers who stopped by. She watched as others laughed and danced, feeling the familiar sense of being slightly outside the circle of belonging. "There you are." Her coworker Darlene appeared beside her, already slightly tipsy. "Come on, they're doing karaoke in the break room. You should sign up." Laurel shook her head firmly. "Oh, I don't think so. Why not? It's just for fun. Nobody's expecting a professional performance." "I just prefer watching," Laurel insisted, though the truth was more complicated. She'd learned long ago that sharing her voice made her vulnerable in ways she wasn't comfortable with. It was easier to keep that part of herself private. As the evening progressed, Laurel relaxed a little. The punch was sweeter than she expected, and the atmosphere grew increasingly jovial. She found herself in a small group of co-workers, laughing at office stories and predictions about the coming year's changes. When someone suggested they all join in the last round of karaoke, Laurel initially declined. But after gentle persistence from Darlene and surprising encouragement from Mr. Patel, she reluctantly agreed to join their group number. The song was an old pop hit everyone knew. As the music started, Laurel stood stiffly at the edge of the group, mouthing rather than singing the words. But halfway through the chorus, caught up in the moment, she forgot herself. Her voice rose above the others, pure and strong, transforming the simple melody into something extraordinary. The group gradually fell silent, leaving Laurel's voice standing alone. It wasn't until the song ended that she realized what had happened. The room had gone completely quiet, all eyes fixed on her with expressions ranging from surprise to amazement. "Laurel," Mr. Patel said slowly, "where on earth did you learn to sing like that?" Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. "I didn't learn. I just sing sometimes at home." "Just at home?" Darlene repeated incredulously. "That's like saying Michelangelo just doodled in his spare time." Laurel made her escape soon after, mortified by the attention. On the drive home, she gripped the steering wheel tightly, replaying the moment in her mind. She'd kept her voice hidden for so long that sharing it, even accidentally, left her feeling strangely exposed. What she didn't know was that Darlene had captured the moment on her phone, intending it as a nice memory of the evening. 3 days later, while Laurel was focused on end-of-year paperwork, the video began circulating around the office. By lunchtime, Mr. Patel stopped by her desk with a strange expression. "Have you seen this?" he asked, holding out his phone. There she was, in her plain navy dress, eyes closed in concentration as she sang. The video had been titled, "Insurance Lady Has Voice of an Angel," and already had several hundred views. "Oh no," Laurel whispered, feeling her privacy crumbling. "Can we get it taken down?" Mr. Patel looked confused. "Take it down?" "Laurel, people love it. The comments are all asking who you are and if you perform anywhere." That evening, Laurel sat in her quiet living room, watching as the view count on the video climbed past 1,000. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications as coworkers and even a few old friends who'd recognized her reached out. Most expressed amazement, asking why she'd never shared her talent before. One message stood out, from her daughter Abby. "Mom, why didn't you tell us you could sing like that? Thomas and I had no idea. This is incredible." Laurel stared at her phone, unsure how to respond. How could she explain that her voice had become something private? A comfort she kept for herself because sharing it meant risking disappointment or rejection. Yet as the days passed and the video continued to spread beyond her small town, something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling more exposed, Laurel began to feel a subtle shift inside herself. Each message of appreciation chipped away at the wall she'd built around her talent. Each expression of amazement made her wonder if perhaps she'd been wrong to hide her voice all these years. One night, unable to sleep, she found herself scrolling through comments on the video. Among them was a link to registration information for auditions for a national talent competition coming to a nearby city in the spring. Laurel stared at it for a long time, her heart racing at the very thought. "Ridiculous," she murmured to herself, closing the page. She was 42. Not some young hopeful with stars in her eyes. She had a steady job, a mortgage nearly paid off, and a sensible life. Dreams of singing on stage belonged to a different version of herself, one who hadn't spent decades filing insurance claims and raising children alone. Yet when she woke the next morning, she found herself returning to that link. Her finger hovered over the application form, trembling slightly. What would it mean to acknowledge this part of herself after all these years? What would it mean to step into the spotlight instead of hiding in the shadows of her own kitchen? In the soft morning light, Laurel Taylor made a decision that would change everything. With unsteady hands, she began to fill out the form. The confirmation email arrived on a Tuesday morning while Laurel was at work. Her hand trembled as she read the message on her phone beneath her desk, trying to maintain her composure. She had been accepted for an audition slot 3 weeks from now, in a city nearly 3 hours away. The reality of what she'd done hit her suddenly, making her stomach tighten with a mix of excitement and terror. "You okay?" asked Darlene from the neighboring cubicle, noticing her coworker's unusual silence. Laurel quickly locked her phone screen. "Fine. Just a message from Thomas about his finals," she lied, not ready to share her plans with anyone. That evening, Laurel sat at her kitchen table with a notepad making calculations. The audition would require a day off work, gas money, possibly a hotel room if the auditions ran late. She studied her budget carefully, mentally shifting funds from her small emergency savings. It was madness spending money on something so unlikely to pan out. Yet something inside her wouldn't allow her to back out. She opened her laptop and began researching the competition more thoroughly. Videos from previous seasons showed polished performers with trained voices, most of them decades younger than her. Many had been performing since childhood or had formal music education. Laurel had neither. Just a lifetime of singing to herself and a natural talent she'd never developed professionally. "What am I doing?" she whispered to her empty kitchen, suddenly overwhelmed by doubt. Her phone buzzed with a video call from Abby. Laurel took a deep breath and composed herself before answering. "Mom." Abby's face appeared, her college dorm room visible in the background. "Thomas and I were just talking about your video again. His roommate's mom saw it and recognized you from that time she chaperoned our 5th grade field trip." Laurel managed a small smile. "The video certainly has traveled. So?" Abby leaned closer to the camera, her expression turning serious. "Are you going to do anything about it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you going to actually do something with your voice? Take lessons, perform somewhere? You're really good, Mom, like seriously good." Laurel hesitated, then decided her daughter deserved the truth. "I applied for an audition. For that big talent show, the one that's on TV." Abby's squeal was so loud that Laurel had to pull the phone away from her ear. "Oh my God, Mom. That's amazing. When is it? Can Thomas and I come watch?" "No audience allowed for preliminary auditions," Laurel said quickly, relieved. The thought of her children watching her possibly make a fool of herself was too much to bear. "And it's probably nothing. Just something I thought I'd try." "It's not nothing," Abby insisted. "It's huge. I'm so proud of you for trying." After they hung up, Laurel sat quietly, her daughter's words echoing in her mind. Proud of her for trying. When was the last time she'd tried something completely new? Something just for herself? She couldn't remember. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Laurel spent her evenings practicing in her living room, recording herself on her phone and listening back with a critical ear. She had chosen a song that had always moved her, one about finding strength after loss. The lyrics resonated with her own journey as a single mother who had rebuilt her life after her husband left. At work, she kept her plans secret, requesting a personal day without explanation. Only at night, alone in her house, did she allow herself to fully embrace this new dream. Sometimes she would close her eyes while singing and imagine standing on a real stage, with lights and an audience. The thought both terrified and thrilled her. The weekend before the audition, Laurel drove to the nearest mall and wandered through department stores, looking for something to wear. Her work clothes were practical but plain, and her few dresses were years old. After trying on nearly a dozen outfits, she finally selected a simple blue dress with a modest neckline and flowing skirt. It wasn't flashy, but it made her feel good, and it was on sale, which eased her guilt about the purchase. The night before the audition, Laurel could barely sleep. She had booked a modest hotel room near the audition venue, planning to drive up early in the morning. As she packed her small overnight bag, doubt crept in again. What was she thinking? A middle-aged insurance worker competing against trained performers. People would laugh the moment she stepped on stage. One day, she told herself firmly. Just give yourself this one day. The drive to the city the next morning was tense. Laurel gripped the steering wheel tightly, rehearsing her song in her head. She had chosen to take the entire day off, regardless of how early her audition might end, knowing she would be too emotionally drained to return to work afterward. The audition venue turned out to be a large convention center, temporarily transformed with stages, waiting areas, and camera setups. Laurel's heart sank as she joined the check-in line. Everywhere she looked were younger, more vibrant contestants. Many had brought entourages of family and friends for support. She stood alone, clutching her registration confirmation. "First time?" asked the woman ahead of her in line, noticing Laurel's nervous expression. Laurel nodded. "That obvious?" The woman smiled kindly. "Everyone's nervous their first time. I'm on my 3rd season trying. Name's Rosie." "Laurel," she replied, grateful for the friendly face. "Any advice?" "Be yourself. They can spot fakes immediately. Oh, and the waiting is the worst part. Bring something to do." Rosie was right about the waiting. After check-in, Laurel was directed to a large holding room filled with rows of chairs. A number pinned to her dress identified her as contestant .347. Current auditions were only in the low 200s, according to a digital display on the wall. It could be hours before her turn. Laurel found a seat near the back and tried to calm her nerves by people watching. The room buzzed with activity. Contestants practicing vocal runs, others applying last-minute makeup or adjusting costumes. A group of 20-somethings with matching t-shirts were filming themselves for social media. Nearby, a production assistant was interviewing contestants for possible backstory segments. "So what makes you special?" Laurel overheard him asking a young man with a guitar. "What's your story?" She pondered that question herself. What was her story? She was just an ordinary woman who had spent decades raising her kids and working a steady job. There was nothing special about her journey. No tragedy to overcome, no unusual circumstances. Just a simple life with a hidden talent. As the hours dragged on, Laurel's confidence began to waver. She watched as contestants emerged from their auditions, some elated, others in tears. The reality of what she was attempting hit her again. She was competing against people who had dedicated their lives to performance, while she had dedicated hers to stability and responsibility. By the time her group was called to line up, Laurel's mouth was dry with anxiety. She followed a small cluster of contestants down a corridor, listening to the production assistant's instructions about where to stand and how to enter the stage. Through an open doorway, she caught a glimpse of the judges' panel, 4 industry professionals whose faces she recognized from television. "Remember, big energy, big smiles," the assistant was saying. "This is your moment to shine." Laurel nodded automatically, though inside she was thinking of turning around and walking straight back to her car. What had seemed brave and exciting 3 weeks ago now felt foolish and naive. The contestants ahead of her went one by one. From her position in the hallway, Laurel could hear snippets of their performances and the judges' comments. Most received constructive feedback, some received enthusiastic praise, and a few were cut off mid-song with polite rejections. Number 347, a staff member called, checking his clipboard. "Laurel Taylor?" "That's me," she said quietly, stepping forward. "You're up next. Wait at the side until they call you." Standing in the wings, Laurel could now see the full stage, much larger than she had imagined, with bright lights and multiple cameras. A young woman was just finishing her audition to appreciative applause. As the contestant exited, she passed Laurel with a sympathetic look that somehow made Laurel feel even more out of place. "Next up, we have contestant number 347, announced the host, reading from a card. "Laurel Taylor from Pine Grove." Laurel stepped onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinding her. She walked carefully to the marked spot in the center, adjusting her glasses nervously. The judges looked up from their notes, their expressions neutral but assessing. "Hello, Laurel," said the lead judge, a woman with sleek hair and an expensive-looking blazer. "Tell us a little about yourself." Laurel cleared her throat, her voice coming out softer than intended. "I'm 42. I work as an administrative assistant at an insurance company. I have twins who are in college now." "And what brings you here today?" asked another judge, his tone suggesting this was a question he had asked hundreds of times before. Laurel hesitated, searching for an answer that wouldn't sound foolish. "A video of me singing at an office party somehow ended up online. People seemed to like it, so I thought, maybe I should try this." The simplicity of her answer hung in the air. "Interesting," the judge replied, though his expression suggested otherwise. "And have you had any formal training or performance experience?" "No, nothing like that. I just sing around the house mostly." The judges exchanged glances that Laurel couldn't quite interpret. In the audience, she noticed a few people whispering to each other. Her outdated dress and sensible shoes suddenly felt glaringly inappropriate among the stylish contestants she had seen throughout the day. "Well," said the lead judge with a tight smile, "let's hear what you've got." The technician handed Laurel a microphone, and she felt its weight in her palm. Her mouth had gone completely dry. Behind the judges' table, she could see a small production crew whispering to each other, one of them making a subtle cutting motion across his throat. Were they already planning to cut her performance short? "Whenever you're ready," said the lead judge, her pen poised over her notepad. Laurel took a deep breath and nodded to the sound technician to start the backing track. The familiar piano introduction began, But in this unfamiliar setting, it sounded different, more exposing somehow. I'm sorry, Laurel said, her voice cracking slightly. Could I start again? The male judge with slicked back hair sighed audibly. Of course, he said, though his tone suggested impatience. He turned to whisper something to the judge beside him, who covered a smile with her hand. From the side of the stage, Laurel could hear muffled laughter from a group of younger contestants waiting their turn. One of them, a girl with elaborate makeup and a sparkly outfit, was filming on her phone with an expression that made Laurel's cheeks burn with embarrassment. The music began again. Laurel closed her eyes for a moment, trying to find her center. When she opened them, she noticed the lead judge checking her watch. My name is Laurel Taylor, she began, her voice coming out higher than usual. And I'll be singing— Yes, we have that information, interrupted the third judge, tapping his pen against the table. Just the song, please. Laurel nodded, feeling smaller by the second. She clutched the microphone with both hands to hide their trembling. The backing track was already several bars in, and she had missed her entrance. The sound technician shot her a look and restarted the music again. This time, Laurel managed to begin singing, but her voice came out thin and unsure. The song that had sounded so powerful in her kitchen now seemed to evaporate in the vast audition space. She hit a wrong note, then another, her confidence crumbling with each mistake. The fourth judge, a music producer known for his directness, held up his hand after just 30 seconds. I think we've heard enough, he said. The music stopped abruptly. Laurel stood frozen under the harsh lights, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Mrs. Taylor, began the lead judge, her voice professionally kind but distant. I appreciate you coming in today. But this competition requires a certain level of performance experience that I'm just not seeing from you. You have a pleasant voice, added the second judge, but it's untrained. There are pitch problems, breathing issues, things that suggest you haven't put in the work required for this level of competition. The third judge leaned forward. May I ask why you decided to audition? Was it just because of that video? Laurel gripped the microphone tighter. I guess I thought maybe I had something worth sharing. The slick-haired judge exchanged glances with his colleagues. The thing is, a viral moment doesn't necessarily translate to a sustainable career. This industry requires years of dedication, training, and, let's be honest, youth is a factor too. From the side of the stage, the laughter grew more noticeable. The girl with the phone was now showing her video to others, all of them struggling to contain their amusement. One of the production assistants shushed them, but the damage was done. I'm sorry, Laurel said quietly. I shouldn't have wasted your time. She turned to leave, but the lead judge called after her. Wait, you haven't even done your full audition yet. Don't you want to at least finish your song? Laurel paused, torn between the humiliation of staying and the defeat of leaving. She looked back at the judges who were watching her with expressions ranging from pity to boredom. I think I'd like to try again, she said, surprised at her own words. If that's okay? The fourth judge raised his eyebrows. You sure? We've got a long line of people waiting. Just one more try, Laurel said, finding a small reserve of determination she didn't know she had. Please. The judges looked at each other, then the lead judge nodded to the sound technician. From the top then, the backing track started once more. Laurel stood still, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. The group of contestants had stopped laughing, curious about this unexpected turn of events. In that moment, a strange calm came over Laurel. If this was to be her only chance at fulfilling a lifelong dream, even if it ended in complete humiliation, she would at least know she had truly tried. Instead of focusing on the judges or the audience, she thought of her kitchen back home, where she sang without fear. She thought of her twins and how she'd always told them to be brave. She thought of all the years she'd silenced her voice for practicality's sake. When she began to sing this time, her voice was different, not perfect, still showing signs of her nervousness, but with a quality that made the room grow still. She sang about rising from ashes, about finding strength in broken places. The lyrics she'd practiced countless times now carried the weight of her own experience, of raising children alone, of rebuilding a life, of finding courage at 42 to stand on this stage. As she reached the chorus, her voice gained power, filling the auditorium with unexpected richness. She hit a high note that rang clear and true. Her eyes closed as she surrendered to the music. When she opened them again, She noticed the change in the room. The judges had stopped writing and were watching her with newfound attention. The lead judge's pen hung suspended above her notepad. Her eyes slightly widened. The contestants at the side of the stage were no longer laughing. The girl with the phone had lowered it slowly, her expression shifting from mockery to surprise. But Laurel barely registered these reactions. She had found that place within herself where nothing existed but the song and her connection to it. Each word flowed from a place of authentic emotion, not technical perfection, but something perhaps more valuable: truth. As she approached the bridge of the song, the most challenging part technically, a small voice of doubt tried to creep back in, but she pushed it aside, drawing on decades of singing alone in rooms where no one judged her. Her voice soared through the difficult passage, not flawlessly, but with a conviction that made technical imperfections seem irrelevant. The final verse was softer, more intimate. Laurel let her voice become almost a whisper, inviting the listeners to lean in. Then she built toward the final chorus, her voice growing in strength until she delivered the final line with all the power she had kept hidden for years. As the last note faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Laurel stood still, breathing hard, uncertain what to do next. Had she made a fool of herself again? Should she just walk off now? Then from somewhere in the back of the auditorium, a single person began to applaud. Others joined in, the sound growing until it filled the space. Even some of the crew members were clapping. The group of contestants who had been laughing earlier now stood in stunned silence, the girl with the phone looking almost guilty. The lead judge cleared her throat, visibly composing herself. "Well," she said, her professional demeanor slightly cracked. "That was unexpected." The fourth judge, known for his bluntness, leaned forward. "Where did that come from? Your first attempt in this. They're like two different people." Laurel shrugged slightly. "I guess I just stopped being afraid." "You have no training at all?" asked the third judge, still looking skeptical. "No, sir. Just a lot of practice in my kitchen." The second judge shook her head in disbelief. "There are technical issues we could point out, but there's something else there, a quality that can't be taught." She turned to her colleagues. "Are we in agreement?" They conferred quietly for a moment. Then the lead judge looked up with a smile that seemed genuinely warm for the first time. "Laurel Taylor, we'd like to see you in the next round." The words took a moment to register. "I passed?" Laurel asked, her voice small with disbelief. "You did more than pass," said the fourth judge. "You just gave us one of the most surprising auditions of the day." As Laurel walked off the stage, her legs felt like they might give out beneath her. A production assistant handed her a yellow slip of paper with details for the next round of auditions. People she passed looked at her differently now, with curiosity rather than dismissal. The girl who had been filming approached her, looking uncomfortable. "Hey, I just wanted to say your performance was really good," she said, not quite meeting Laurel's eyes. "I'm sorry about before." "It's okay," Laurel replied, though the hurt still lingered. "Good luck with your audition." In a daze, Laurel collected her belongings from the holding area. As she walked toward the exit, Rosie, the friendly woman from the check-in line, rushed over to her. "I heard what happened in there," Rosie said excitedly. "Everyone's talking about it." "The insurance lady who blew the judges away after they almost sent her home. That's going to make for great TV." "Great TV," Laurel repeated, the reality of what she'd done slowly sinking in. Her simple life at Henderson's Insurance suddenly seemed very far away. What would Mr. Patel say? What would her neighbors think? And how would she explain to her children that their ordinary mother was now advancing in a national talent competition? As she pushed through the doors into the late afternoon sunlight, Laurel pulled out her phone. There were 3 missed calls from Abby, and a string of text messages asking for updates. She started to type a response, then stopped, overwhelmed by all she had to tell. Instead, she took a deep breath of the city air and allowed herself a moment to feel something she hadn't expected. Pride, not just for advancing in the competition, but for facing her fears, for standing her ground when it would have been easier to run away. "I did it," she whispered to herself, a smile spreading slowly across her face as she walked to her car, yellow ticket clutched tightly in her hand. The drive home felt surreal to Laurel. The sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and orange as her modest sedan cruised along the highway, away from the city and back toward her small town. Her yellow ticket sat on the passenger seat beside her phone, which kept buzzing with messages from Abby. Laurel had finally sent a simple text. I got through. Call you when I get home. The reality of what had happened hadn't fully sunk in yet. She had gone from being nearly laughed off the stage to advancing to the next round. The judges' faces when she'd truly started singing, that moment of surprise followed by genuine interest, kept replaying in her mind. By the time Laurel pulled into her driveway, night had fallen. Her small house looked exactly as she had left it that morning, but somehow it felt different. Or perhaps she was the one who had changed. Inside, Laurel kicked off her shoes and sank onto her living room couch. She should eat something, she knew. But excitement and nervousness had taken away her appetite. Instead, she picked up her phone and called Abby. Mom, Abby answered on the first ring. Tell me everything. Did you do it? What happened? Laurel found herself laughing, the tension of the day finally breaking. It was quite a day, she said, then began to recount everything. The long wait, her initial nerves, the judge's dismissive attitudes, and finally, her decision to try again. Wait, so they were actually making fun of you? Abby sounded outraged. That's awful. Not exactly making fun, Laurel corrected. More like, they didn't see any reason to take me seriously. And honestly, my first attempt was pretty terrible. Still, that's no reason to be rude, Abby insisted. So then what happened? I don't know exactly, Laurel said thoughtfully. Something just changed inside me. I decided if this was my only chance, I wanted to really try, not just go through the motions. And then, it was like all those years of singing alone in the house just poured out. I wish I could have seen their faces, Abby said, her voice proud. Trust me, it was worth the drive just for that, Laurel laughed. The next round is in 3 weeks. They're filming the preliminary rounds for potential backstory segments, but the televised episodes don't start until they're down to the top 50 contestants. Do you think you'll make it that far? Laurel paused. I honestly don't know. There are so many talented people there, people who've been training and performing for years. But none of them are Laurel Taylor, Abby said firmly. Listen, can Thomas and I tell people about this? Or do you want to keep it quiet for now? It was a good question. Laurel hadn't thought about how to handle this back home. Maybe just keep it between us for now? I still need to figure out how to tell work I'll need another day off. After talking with Abby, Laurel tried to settle into her normal evening routine, but everything felt off-kilter. She found herself standing in front of her bathroom mirror, studying her reflection. The woman who looked back at her was the same as always. Shoulder-length brown hair with strands of gray she'd never bothered to color, laugh lines around her eyes, simple silver-framed glasses. Nothing about her appearance suggested contestant on a national talent show. The next morning, Laurel arrived at Henderson's Insurance at her usual time, 8:15 a.m., coffee in hand. She had barely settled at her desk when Mr. Patel appeared beside her cubicle. Laurel, he said warmly, how was your personal day yesterday? Everything okay? She nodded, feeling guilty about the half-truth. Fine, thanks. Just had some things to take care of. Good, good, he said, then lowered his voice. Listen, I've been meaning to talk to you about that video. It's really taken off, you know. We've had calls coming in from people asking if you're that singing lady from the insurance company. Laurel's cheeks grew warm. I'm so sorry about that. I never meant to create any disruption. Disruption? Mr. Patel laughed. It's the most exciting thing that's happened here in years. In fact, I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to perform something at the company picnic next month. The regional manager saw the video and specifically requested it. The question caught Laurel off guard. Singing in front of strangers at an audition had been one thing. They didn't know her, would never see her again if she failed. But performing in front of people she had to face every day at work? The thought made her stomach tighten. I'll think about it, she managed. Throughout the morning, Laurel tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting to the upcoming second round of auditions. According to her information packet, she would need to prepare 2 songs this time, one upbeat and one ballad. She had 3 weeks to practice, to try to address some of the technical issues the judges had mentioned. During her lunch break, instead of eating in the break room as usual, Laurel sat in her car and used her phone to search for vocal warm-up exercises. The results were overwhelming. Hundreds of videos and articles about proper breathing techniques, vocal placement, resonance. Terms she'd never heard before. She felt woefully unprepared compared to contestants who understood all this technical language. As she scrolled through the search results, an idea struck her. There was a community college one town over. They had a music department, maybe they offered voice lessons. On impulse, Laurel called their continuing education office. "Hi, I was wondering if you offer any voice lessons for adults. Not students, I mean." "We do have a community program," the receptionist explained. "Professor Reynolds teaches evening classes twice a week, and he also offers private lessons." By the end of her lunch break, Laurel had scheduled a private lesson for the following evening. It would cost $45 for a half-hour session, more than she would normally spend on herself, but she rationalized it as an investment in her new journey. That evening, as Laurel practiced in her living room, she realized how much her life had changed in just a few days. For years, her routine had been predictable: work, home, occasional calls with her children, quiet weekends doing laundry or catching up on TV shows. Now she had voice lessons to prepare for, songs to practice, and a second audition looming on the horizon. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Thomas, her son. "Mom, Abby just told me everything." "That's incredible." Hearing the excitement in his voice made Laurel smile. "It's not that big a deal, honey. I just got through one round." "Are you kidding?" "It's huge. My history professor knows someone who tried out for that show 3 times and never made it past the first audition." They talked for a while, Thomas's enthusiasm warming Laurel's heart. Before hanging up, he said something that stuck with her. "You know what's cool about this, Mom? For all those years while you were taking care of us, you had this amazing talent that we didn't even know about. It's like we're getting to discover a whole new side of you." The next evening, Laurel found herself sitting nervously in a small practice room at the community college, waiting for Professor Reynolds. When the door opened, she was surprised to see a man not much older than herself, with kind eyes and a casual demeanor. "Ms. Taylor?" he said, extending his hand. "I'm David Reynolds. Nice to meet you." "Laurel, please," she replied, shaking his hand. "So the department secretary mentioned you're preparing for some kind of performance?" Laurel hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding the truth. "I auditioned for that big TV talent competition. Somehow I made it through to the second round, but I have no formal training. I thought maybe some lessons might help me avoid making a complete fool of myself." Instead of the skepticism she expected, David's face lit up with interest. "That's fantastic. Those auditions are notoriously difficult. You must have some natural talent. Or they needed someone to edit into an entertaining failure," Laurel said with a self-deprecating smile. "I doubt that," David said kindly. "Let's start with some simple exercises to see where you are, okay?" The next half hour flew by. David led her through warm-ups that made her feel ridiculous at first, humming, making siren sounds, pushing air through her lips like a horse. But he explained each exercise clearly, showing how it related to breath control or vocal placement. "You have a beautiful natural instrument," he told her after she sang a simple scale. "But you're not supporting your breath correctly, which is why you probably struggle with longer phrases or higher notes." He stood behind her, placing a hand lightly on her diaphragm. "Breathe in here, not in your chest. Feel the difference?" He demonstrated, and Laurel could immediately tell what he meant. "That's it," he encouraged as she tried again. "Now sing the phrase again with that support." The difference was subtle but noticeable. The note came out stronger, more controlled. By the end of the lesson, Laurel's head was spinning with new information, but she felt a spark of hope. Maybe with some proper technique to back up her natural ability, she really could hold her own in the next round. "Same time next week?" David asked as they wrapped up. "Could we possibly do twice a week until my audition? It's in less than 3 weeks. David checked his calendar. "I can fit you in Tuesdays and Fridays. It'll be an intensive crash course, but if you practice daily, we might make some real progress." As Laurel drove home, she felt a new sense of purpose. For the first time in years, she was investing in herself, not as a mother, not as an employee, but as someone with a passion and talent worth developing. That night, she stood in her living room with a new awareness of her body as an instrument. She practiced the breathing exercises David had taught her, feeling the difference in her voice when she supported it properly. A neighbor walking by might have been surprised to see the usually reserved Laurel Taylor belting notes with her arms spread wide. A look of fierce concentration on her face, the woman who had spent decades blending into the background was finally stepping into the spotlight and finding that perhaps she belonged there after all. The 3 weeks leading up to the second audition passed in a blur of activity. By day, Laurel continued her work at Henderson's Insurance, filing claims and answering phones with the same quiet efficiency she'd always shown. But her evenings took on a new rhythm. Voice lessons with Professor Reynolds twice a week, hours of practice in her living room, and research on techniques she could apply on her own. "You're making remarkable progress," David told her during their final lesson before the audition. "Most students take months to grasp what you've picked up in weeks." Laurel smiled, pleased but still doubtful. "It helps to have a good teacher. But I'm still nowhere near the level of the other contestants." David shook his head. "Stop comparing yourself. You have something many trained singers lack, an authentic emotional connection to the music. Technical skills can be taught, but that quality is rare." The night before the second audition, Laurel sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, reviewing the songs she had prepared. For her upbeat number, she'd chosen a pop song from the 90s that showcased her vocal range. For the ballad, she was sticking with the song from her first audition but with improved technique. Her phone rang. It was Abby. "Just calling to wish you good luck tomorrow," her daughter said. "Thomas and I were thinking about you." "Thanks, sweetie. I'm nervous, but not like last time." It was true. The paralyzing fear had been replaced by a more manageable nervousness mixed with genuine excitement. "Mom, no matter what happens tomorrow, we're really proud of you. Taking this chance, putting yourself out there. It's pretty amazing." Laurel felt her eyes grow misty. "That means a lot. Oh, and check your email," Abby added mysteriously before hanging up. Laurel opened her laptop and found a new email from both twins. Inside was a video, their faces side by side in split screen as they lived in different states for college. Their message was simple but powerful. They'd recorded themselves holding signs with encouraging words for their mother, telling her how much she'd inspired them by pursuing her dream. "You showed us it's never too late," Thomas said at the end of the video. "Now go show everyone else." The next morning, as Laurel drove back to the city for her second audition, she felt different than she had 3 weeks before. The imposter syndrome hadn't completely disappeared, but it had diminished. She belonged there as much as anyone else. This time the audition was held in a different venue, a proper theater rather than a convention center. As contestants checked in, Laurel noticed many familiar faces from the first round. Some nodded in recognition. Others seemed too caught up in their own preparation to notice her. To her surprise, several people approached her throughout the morning. "Hey, you're the insurance lady, right?" asked a young man with a guitar case. "I heard about your audition from my friend who was there. Said it was incredible." Later, a teenage girl with vibrant purple hair stopped by her seat. "I just wanted to say I'm rooting for you. My grandma sings too, but she'd never have the guts to do this." By the time Laurel's group was called to prepare, word had spread. She was no longer just another middle-aged woman out of her depth. She was the insurance lady who shocked everyone, a contestant with a story. A production assistant approached her in the waiting area. "The producers would like to film a short interview segment with you before your audition." "Is that okay?" Laurel hadn't expected this. "What kind of questions will they ask?" "Just about your background, why you're here, that sort of thing. It's for possible inclusion if you advance further." 20 minutes later, Laurel found herself sitting in a small room with a camera pointed at her face. The interviewer, a friendly woman with a clipboard, asked about her life, her job, and how she'd discovered her talent. "I didn't discover it recently," Laurel explained. "I've always sung, just privately for myself." "And why did you hide your gift for so long?" Laurel thought carefully before answering. "I wouldn't say I was hiding it. Life just took me in a different direction. I had twins to raise on my own, bills to pay. Music became something personal, a way to express myself when no one was listening." "What changed? Why audition now?" "That video from the office party going viral was the push I needed. But I think I was ready for a change. My children are grown, building their own lives. It felt like time to remember who I am besides just mom or the insurance lady." The interviewer smiled. "Well, after today's audition, you might be known as something else entirely." Backstage, the energy was different from the first audition. The stakes were higher. Everyone here had already proven themselves once. Laurel could feel the competitive edge in the air as contestants warmed up their voices or paced nervously. A production assistant called her name. "You're up in 5 minutes." Laurel did the breathing exercises David had taught her, mentally reviewing the technical aspects she needed to focus on. Support from the diaphragm, open throat, proper placement of high notes. When she walked onto the stage, the same panel of judges sat before her, but their expressions had changed. There was curiosity now, perhaps even anticipation. "Welcome back, Laurel," said the lead judge with a genuine smile. "We've been looking forward to hearing you again." "Thank you," Laurel replied, her voice steady. "I've been working hard since the last time." "We can see that," said the fourth judge, indicating her outfit, a simple but elegant dress in deep purple that Laurel had splurged on for the occasion. "You look like you belong here now." The music for her upbeat song began, and Laurel felt a surge of adrenaline. The techniques she'd learned kicked in automatically as she began to sing, her voice stronger and more controlled than before. She even incorporated some of the simple movement David had suggested. Nothing flashy, just enough to show engagement with the performance. As she hit the chorus, Laurel saw the judges nodding appreciatively. The third judge was even tapping his pen in rhythm. Unlike the first audition, they let her complete the entire song, which she finished with a powerful note that showcased her newfound breath control. The applause was immediate and enthusiastic, not just from courtesy but genuine appreciation. "Now that's what I call progress," said the second judge. "You've clearly been working on your technique." "I've had some coaching," Laurel admitted. "I wanted to take this opportunity seriously." "It shows," the lead judge said. "Would you like to continue with your ballad?" Laurel nodded, and the music for her second song began, the same one from her first audition, but now she approached it with more technical confidence. She knew where to breathe, how to support her voice through difficult passages, how to connect with the emotional heart of the song while maintaining control. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the applause began. The fourth judge, usually the most critical, gave her a small nod of respect. "Laurel," began the lead judge, "what's remarkable is that you've managed to improve technically without losing the raw emotional quality that made your first audition special. That's not easy to do. We see contestants all the time who have been training for years," added the third judge, "but there's something about your voice that feels lived in. There's a story there." The judges conferred briefly, then the lead judge smiled broadly. "We'd like to see you in the top 50. Congratulations, you're moving on to the televised rounds." The weeks that followed were unlike anything Laurel had experienced before. The production team came to Pine Grove to film segments about her life, shots of her at work, at home, even a special feature with her voice teacher David explaining the remarkable progress of his unexpected student. Mr. Patel gave her time off for filming and rehearsals, proudly telling customers, "Our Laurel is going to be on national television." Her co-workers organized a viewing party for the premiere episode. The twins flew home to be with her for the first televised performance. The night before the show, they sat in her living room looking through old photo albums. "Remember this?" Abby asked, pointing to a faded photograph of Laurel singing at their elementary school talent show. She had volunteered when the music teacher fell ill, singing to a backing track while the children performed. "I'd forgotten about that," Laurel said softly, touching the image. "That was the last time I sang in public before all this started." Thomas looked up from the album. "Why did you stop, Mom? You clearly loved it." Laurel thought for a moment. Life gets busy. Dreams get put aside sometimes, but they don't disappear. They wait for the right moment to come back. The next day, standing backstage at the television studio, Laurel felt a strange calm. Whatever happened next, whether she advanced further or went home after this performance, she had already achieved something remarkable. She had rediscovered a part of herself that had been dormant, but never truly lost. When the host called her name, the audience applauded politely, most of them unfamiliar with her story. But as her pre-recorded segment played on the giant screens, showing her journey from office party viral video to nervous first audition to dedicated student, the energy in the room changed. By the time the video ended, showing Laurel practicing in her modest living room with the same determination as contestants half her age, the audience was invested. She stepped into the spotlight wearing a gown that managed to be both elegant and appropriate for a woman her age, midnight blue with subtle sparkle, professional but with just enough flair to show she belonged on that stage. The music began, and Laurel sang with everything she had: technical skill honed by hours of practice, emotional depth drawn from decades of life experience, and a newfound confidence that transformed her presence on stage. When she finished, the audience rose to their feet. In the judges' panel, even the most critical judge was standing. And in the front row, her twins were cheering loudest of all, their faces shining with pride. Laurel didn't end up winning the competition that season. She made it to the top 15 before being eliminated, an extraordinary achievement for someone who had never performed professionally. But winning had ceased to be the point. What she gained was far more valuable: rediscovery of herself, a new path forward, and the knowledge that it's never too late to let your light shine. The woman who had been overlooked and underestimated, the simple woman who had been ridiculed at her first audition, had blown minds and, more importantly, had found her voice. In the months that followed, Laurel received offers to record an album, invitations to perform at local events, and even a part-time position teaching community singing classes alongside David. She kept her job at Henderson's Insurance. She still had bills to pay, after all, but her life had expanded in ways she never imagined possible at 42. Her first album, titled Finally, featured songs that told her story, of patience, of delayed dreams, and of second chances. On the cover was a simple photograph, Laurel in her kitchen, where she had sung alone for all those years, now smiling directly at the camera with the confidence of a woman who had finally stepped into the spotlight and found it was exactly where she belonged.